Hey guys, it's Julia and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my September reading wrap-up video. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in September. I know it's already beginning of October when you see this, but better late than never. When will I ever learn? Hopefully soon, I guess. Anyway, yeah, let's get on with it. So these are all the books that I read in September, and I also read one ebook. So I'm gonna start with all of these and go through them in no particular order. And yeah, so I think I read, how many are these? There are 5, yeah, so 6 books in total in September, which I think is pretty good. Yeah, so let's start. So the first book I read was The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This is a adult romance novel, and this is a book about a guy who, his name is Kai, and he's originally from Vietnam, and he knows that he's not very good with relationships and social interactions due to him being autistic, and therefore his mother decides to go to Vietnam and essentially find him a bride to bring back home. And when she goes to Vietnam, she meets Esme, who is working in a hotel, and Kai's mother basically gives her an offer to say, you can come back to the US for the summer and meet my son, and then you have over the summer to decide whether you want to get married. And basically that's the story from there. And yeah, and essentially that's what happens after Esme decides to go along with it, and it's actually very sweet. I really liked it. I believe this is the second book of Helen Huang that I have read. I read the what is it called? What is her first book called? It is called The Kiss Quotient. It took me a while to remember it. Yeah, I read The Kiss Quotient some time ago, and that's her first book, and that also has a character who has autism, or I believe it's Asperger's, which I think is the same thing, or not the same thing, it's like on the same spectrum. And yeah, I really enjoyed her books. And including this one, and the story was really heartwarming and sweet. Yeah, it's a romance novel, but it's kind of different because, I don't know, it's just very refreshing to see that side of it. And also I love the character of Esme because she is quite hardworking, and she has never been outside her country, which is Vietnam, and then she goes there, and yeah, it's just very interesting to see her eyes open up and how she develops as a person and as a character, and also the relationship which begins to form between Kai and herself. And yeah, I won't say anything else, but I really enjoyed it, and I believe I gave this one 4 stars. So yeah, that was the first one I read. The second book that I read was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, and this is a YA contemporary novel, and I've heard a lot of good things about this book, and I've been meaning to read it for a long time, and I finally did, and I'm so glad that I read it. I believe I started this book one afternoon, and then I finished it the next morning. and so I definitely really love this story. This is a story about two girls, Camino and what's her name? Yahaira. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry if I'm not. But yeah, basically these are two girls. Camino lives in the Dominican Republic, and Yahaira, she is from the Dominican Republic originally. Her family is, but she lives and is brought up. She's born and raised in Brooklyn, and I think it's Brooklyn, yeah, and in New York. And essentially this tells a story from both of their perspectives, how they, following their father's sudden death in a plane crash, they actually, is basically how they're dealing with this, and yeah, and then they, at some point, these two characters actually meet because they find out that they're sisters, and essentially her father had two different lives. Like, he would go to the summer to the Dominican Republic and visit Camino, and then he would spend the rest of his years with Yahaira in America. And they eventually find out this, and it's just about how they are grieving this loss and their two lives, and how eventually these two paths that were both following the same experiences of the death and loss of their father meet. And I really enjoyed it. This book is told in verse, and I have to admit it was something that I haven't really read a lot of books which are told in verse before, but yeah, I thought I would maybe be a bit apprehensive about it, and yes, I was, but it didn't stop me. The story is so beautifully told, and I really liked both of the characters and also their families. This is a story about not only about grief, but it's about sisterhood and knowing your roots and also your family, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. This is the second book of Elizabeth Acevedo that I have read, and I believe she has one other book that I haven't read. I think it's called Poet X, but I really want to get to that now, because that's the only book of hers that I haven't read yet. And so far I've enjoyed all of the books, including Clap When You Land, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I gave this one 5 stars. So yeah. The next book that I read was Pride by E.B. Soboy, and this book is essentially a retelling of it's a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but it's set in Brooklyn. So this follows the story of what's her name? Zuri. Yeah, her name is Zuri, and she has essentially lived in this neighborhood in Brooklyn all of her life, and because of that she's very protective of her neighborhood and where she is from and her family. And when her family gets new neighbors, she finds one of the boys quite arrogant and standoffish, and it just tells a story of how they decide to form a relationship, but it's a hate to love relationship, and it's essentially the story Pride and Prejudice retelling. I really enjoyed this one as well. I have to admit there were some parts where I found the main character Zuri a bit annoying, just because she's a teenager, and I understand, I get it, why she is so, Zuri's a character, I like her, but at some points I found her a bit too much, like, she's very protective of her family and where she comes from, and she's very prideful, hence the title, of where she's from and her neighborhood. I think at some point, yeah, she talks about that a lot, but at some point I just found it just to be come on, girl, that there's other things to talk about. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. Yeah, this is the first Pride and Prejudice retelling I've ever read, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I gave this one 4 stars. So yeah, 4 stars. The next book that I read is called The Bells by Danielle Clayton. And this is a YA fantasy novel. And this is a story of Camellia. And Camellia is basically part of this world, which is kind of inspired by New Orleans or New Orleans. I never know how to say the name of the city correct, but I'm gonna say New Orleans. It's inspired by New Orleans, and basically Camellia lives and is part of a society where beauty is the most valuable asset, and essentially she is part of these girls that are called the Bells, and they are born with powers to enhance beauty, or if somebody is not considered to be beautiful, they can give treatments or make them beautiful. And essentially she is part of this group called the Bells, and every year there is a ball, and one of the bells gets chosen as the favorite belle, and when you get chosen to be the favorite, essentially you go and work for the queen and the royal family. And so it tells the story how that happens, and following some events which I won't say, but yeah, after that you see how Camilla, she gets chosen to be the belle and to work for a royal family, and essentially her job is to give them beauty treatments and to make people beautiful with her magic. And but there's a twist, because she starts working there and then something is not quite right. So yeah, it just tells the story of that. I'm not going to go into it more longer, but I really enjoyed it. I loved how it was so inspired by New Orleans and New Orleanian, I guess you would say, call it that, New Orleanian culture, because it's like French, and yeah, that is kind of entwined. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I believe that there's a sequel to this book. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm gonna put a picture here. And yeah, because it kind of ends on a cliffhanger, so can't wait to get to that one. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one too, so I gave this one 4 stars as well. So yeah, The Bells. The next book that I read was The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley, and this is a story about this is set in West London, in a part called Fulham, which is a part that I actually know of London, which I know quite well because I actually used to live there. But anyway, you follow these sets of characters, and there's one guy called Julian, and he is a pensioner, and he is retired, and he is essentially quite lonely. So he decides to write down his thoughts and feelings in this notebook, which he decides to name The Authenticity Project. And it's basically saying that let's be honest with each other and say how you really feel. And he leaves this notebook in a cafe where he always goes to, and somebody picks it up, and basically each person who picks this up decides to write in it, but they all kind of get connected with each other to this cafe. And that is where one of the characters' cafe, which is called, her name is Monica, and her cafe is called Monica's Cafe, and they all kind of get connected with each other. And you follow a lot of different people. For example, you follow Julian, who is a former artist and pensioner. Then you follow a young traveler. Then you follow a recuperating I guess you would say, alcoholic and drug addict. And then you also follow a single mother who is dealing, and no, she's not a single mother, she's a new mom, and she is she's like kind of struggling with motherhood and things like that, but they all come together, and they like become this friendship group centered around Monica's cafe. And there's like a love story between some of them, and I found it sweet. However, I think there were some characters that I did not like as much as others. And yeah, there were some parts of the book that I found not a lot did not happen there was not a lot going on of that in those chapters and about those characters, which I thought could have been without. But overall, it was pleasurable. It wasn't nothing fantastic, but it was cute and it was sweet and it was heartwarming, and I appreciate that. So I gave this one 3 stars. So yeah, so that was another one. Okay, the books are falling down. Anyway, the last book that I read was actually I read it on Kindle, so I don't have a physical book, but that is called Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angeles. I'm gonna put a picture here. And this is a YA fantasy book, and this is essentially about I'm not going to talk a lot about and go into detail about it because I've actually done a full review of this book previously, and I can link that down below if you want to check that out. But this is essentially sorry, I'm going to start over again. This is essentially a YA fantasy group. We follow 3 characters: Jack, Marco, and Jack DeMarco, and God, what's her name called? What is the female character's name? I can't remember now. I'm completely gone blank. What's her name? I can't for the life of me remember what the female character's name is, because it was a couple weeks ago since I finished this book. But yeah, it's gonna come to me, but if not, I'm gonna write it down below. But anyway, we follow these 3 female characters, and these 3 characters, and the girl, she is a performer at this nightclub, and picture it as like kind of like Moulin Rouge means Phantom of the Opera nightclub, because it's very elaborate and fancy. And however, she has a special talent, which is that she can perform magic, and she has always been trained by her kind of manager, Jack, how to use her magic. But one day she decides to run away to the city, and where there's actually a magic competition. And the thing is, it's not actually about I really like this book because it's not essentially about where the story is centered around a show. It is centered around a show, but normally in those kind of books it is magic, magic is part of the story, and it's like a dark element. But here it's actually magic is the it's what the characters use to put on the show, and I think that's quite different. But it just it tells the story how she goes to a city and she decides to join this magic competition, and then she meets several characters along the way, including Marco, who was a former competitor in this several years ago. And things happen, and there's like a romance aspect, and however, there's also something dark and mysterious going on. Something is not quite right, and I really enjoyed this book. It's so dark and mysterious and intriguing, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say at the moment. If you want my full thoughts on this, please check out my review of this book, and I'm going to link it down below, and yeah, you can hear my full thoughts about it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 stars as well. Yeah. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in September. And yeah, so I think 6 books. So all of these books that I mentioned before, 6 books. I think that's quite good. I don't know how I'm gonna do in October. I know I've already finished. No, I'm in the middle of one book. I've actually started reading one book in October, but hopefully I can keep it up. I am I think definitely my reading is going to go down this month because in my last video, in case you missed it, I showed you that I have a brand new puppy, and she keeps me busy all the time. So yeah, if anybody knows what it's like to have a little creature like that who is constantly running around, you know that you don't have a lot of time. So yeah, it's maybe probably gonna go down, but I'm trying my best. Yeah, anyway, so those are all the books that I read last month. I think, I don't know which I would say were my favorites. I think probably it would be either Clap When You Land or Where Dreams Ascend by Elizabeth Acevedo that I just talked about. Yeah, because I don't know, I just really love those books, and both of these books I really finished. I really connected with them, and I finished really quickly. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now. What are the books that you read in last month or in September? Did you read any of these books, or are you planning to read any of these? Please let me know if you have read them. Please comment what you think, because I always want to chat. And yeah, so that's it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you could just please help me out and check out my Bookstagram account, which is at I'd Read More Books. And if you could also like and subscribe to this video, that would be really great. If you enjoyed it and you want to see more of these kinds of videos, yeah, that would really help me out. And yeah, I don't know when this is going to go up, but I hope you're having a great week wherever you are, and I hope it's filled with lots of books. And yeah, have a good one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!